The year was 2347, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Federation for exactly 100 years. In all that time, the other species had never thought much of the humans. They saw them as a young race. Curious, yes. Hard-working, certainly. But weak. Small. Unimportant. In the grand order of things, Admiral Kate Morrison had grown used to the way aliens looked at her. That mixture of pity and mild contempt. She stood now on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Horizon, watching as the holographic screen flickered to life. Beside her, Captain Ben Harris stood with his hands behind his back, trying to look calm. He was not calm. Kate could tell from the way his jaw was tight. The face that appeared on the screen was not human. High Chancellor Vethorin of the Kelthian Empire had the body of a giant insect. His eyes were made of thousands of tiny lenses. His mouth was a collection of sharp mandibles that clicked together when he spoke. He was the most powerful being in the known galaxy, and he knew it. "Admiral Morrison," he said. His voice was cold and sharp. "I trust you have received our transmission." Kate nodded slowly. "I have, Chancellor." "Then you understand what is required." Vethorin leaned forward slightly. Behind him, Kate could see other members of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species. All watching, all waiting. The Devourer swarm has broken through the Outer Rim defenses. They have already consumed 3 colony worlds. At their current speed, they will reach the inner systems within 2 years. Kate had read the reports. The Devourer swarm was the nightmare that every species in the galaxy feared. They were not a civilization. They were not even truly alive in the normal sense. They were a force of nature. Billions of living ships that moved through space like a plague of locusts. They ate everything. Planets, moons, stars. They converted all matter into more of themselves and moved on. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever survived them. "The Galactic Council has decided," Vethorin continued, "that all member species must contribute their full military forces to a combined defense fleet. This fleet will be placed under the command of Admiral Zeth Coral of the Kelthian Navy." He paused, his mandibles clicking slowly. "You will transfer control of all human vessels to his authority, immediately." Ben made a small sound beside her. Kate did not react. "I understand," she said carefully. "And what role will human ships play in this combined fleet?" And Vethorin's compound eyes seemed to glitter with something that might have been amusement. "Your ships will serve where they are needed most, Admiral. The front lines require vessels that can absorb the first wave of the swarm's attack. Your cruisers are adequate for this purpose." Kate felt Ben stiffen beside her. She understood his anger. The Chancellor was not asking humanity to fight alongside the other species. He was asking them to die first, to be the shield that protected the more valuable ships behind them. "Chancellor," Kate said, keeping her voice steady, "humanity's fleet is small. We have 47 cruisers, 12 carriers, and 2 battleships. If we send all of them to the front lines, we will have nothing left to defend Earth." "Earth is a small world," Vethorin replied dismissively. "If the combined fleet fails, one more planet will make no difference. Your species should be honored to sacrifice for the greater good of the galaxy." The transmission fell silent for a moment. Kate could feel the eyes of every council member on her. They were waiting for her to agree, to bow her head and accept her place at the bottom of the galactic order. She smiled. It was a strange smile. Small and knowing. The kind of smile that made Ben look at her with sudden confusion. "Chancellor Vethorin," she said, "I will need to consult with Earth Command before I can agree to your terms. I am sure you understand." The Chancellor's mandibles clicked with irritation. "There is no time for delays, Admiral. Every hour you waste is an hour the swarm uses to grow stronger." "I understand completely," Kate replied. "I will have an answer for you within 24 hours. Before Vethorin could argue further, she reached out and ended the transmission. The holographic screen went dark. Ben let out a long breath. "They're going to use us as cannon fodder," he said quietly. They don't even care if we survive. Kate turned away from the screen and walked toward the window. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the devourer swarm was getting closer. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was preparing to sacrifice humanity to save itself. "Contact Earth," she said. "Get me Secretary Nathan Cole at the Department of Deep Archives." Ben frowned. "Deep Archives? I've never heard of that department." "No," Kate agreed. "You haven't. No one has. That's rather the point." She continued to stare out at the stars. Her smile had not faded. "What's going on, Admiral?" Ben asked. "What aren't you telling me?" Kate was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft, almost gentle. "Ben, what do you know about human history?" He shrugged. "The usual. We evolved on Earth about 250,000 years ago. Built our first cities about 10,000 years ago. Reached space in the 20th century. Joined the Federation in 2247. That's what the textbooks say," Kate agreed. "That's what everyone believes. The aliens certainly believe it. They think we're children. Babies who just learned to walk among the stars." She turned to face him. Her eyes were bright with something he had never seen before. Something ancient and knowing. "What if I told you that the textbooks are wrong? What if I told you that humanity is far older than anyone knows? That we have risen and fallen dozens of times, over billions of years? That every time we fall, we hide our greatest secrets and wait for ourselves to find them again?" Ben stared at her. "I would say that sounds impossible." "It does," Kate admitted. "But impossible things happen all the time. That's what makes them so interesting." She walked past him toward the door. "Contact Nathan Cole," she said again. "Tell him it's time. He'll know what that means." "Time for what?" Ben called after her. Kate paused at the door. She looked back over her shoulder. "Time to show the galaxy what humanity has been hiding. Time to wake up the old ones." And then she was gone, leaving Ben alone on the bridge with 1,000 questions and no answers. Outside, the stars continued to burn, and somewhere in the void between them, ancient things began to stir. The elevator had been descending for nearly 20 minutes, and it showed no sign of stopping. Secretary Nathan Cole stood in silence, his hands folded behind his back. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had held his position for 15 years, and in all that time, he had hoped this day would never come. But hope was a fragile thing, and the universe did not care about hope. Beside him stood his assistant, Amy Lawson. She was young, barely 30, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had worked for the Department of Deep Archives for 3 years, handling paperwork and filing reports that no one ever read. She had always known there was something strange about her job. The department had no windows, no visitors, no connection to any other branch of government, but she had never asked questions. Now, as the elevator continued to drop deeper and deeper beneath the Mojave Desert, she was starting to wish she had. "Sir," she said quietly, "how deep does this go?" Nathan glanced at the display on the wall. They had passed 3 miles 10 minutes ago. The number was still climbing. "Deep enough," he said. The elevator finally stopped with a soft chime. The doors opened to reveal a corridor that stretched into the distance, lit by pale blue lights that seemed to glow from the walls themselves. The air was cold and dry. It smelled like stone and time. Amy stepped out slowly. The corridor was lined with doors, each one made of heavy metal and sealed with locks that looked older than anything she had ever seen. But what caught her attention were the numbers on the doors. Not room numbers, dates. She stopped in front of one door and stared at the marking. It read, 10,000 BCE. "Sir," she whispered, "what is this place?" Nathan walked past her, his footsteps echoing in the silence. "This is where we keep the things that humanity found before we were supposed to find them." He continued down the corridor. Amy followed, her eyes moving from door to door. 50,000 BCE. 100,000 BCE. 500,000 BCE. The numbers kept growing larger. The dates kept reaching further back into the past. In 1947, Nathan said as he walked. A team of scientists was sent to investigate a strange signal in the New Mexico desert. The official story says they found a crashed weather balloon. The conspiracy theorists say they found a crashed alien spacecraft. He stopped in front of a door. This one was different from the others. It had no date. Instead, it was marked with two simple words: before time. Both stories were wrong, Nathan continued. What they found was a gateway. A door built into the rock itself, hidden for millions of years. And on the other side of that door, they found a message. He pressed his palm against a scanner on the wall. The door hissed and began to open. A message from who? Amy asked. Nathan looked at her with eyes that seemed suddenly very old. From us. The door opened fully, revealing a chamber so large that Amy could not see the far walls. The ceiling was lost in darkness above them. But what filled the space made her forget about the size. Holographic displays floated in the air. Thousands of them. Each one showed blueprints, diagrams, specifications for machines, and vehicles that Amy could not begin to understand. At the center of the chamber stood a single pillar of light, and within that light floated a ship, not a model, a hologram of a real ship. It was enormous. The scale markers beside it indicated a length of over 800 kilometers. It was covered in symbols that seemed to move and shift when Amy looked directly at them. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. What you are looking at, Nathan said, is a Dreadnought-class warship. It was built approximately 4 billion years ago by a civilization that called themselves the first humans. Amy's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Nathan walked toward the central display. Humanity is not young, Amy. We are old. Older than any species in the galaxy. We rose to power long before the stars that currently fill the sky were even born. We built ships that could cross galaxies in hours. We created weapons that could destroy suns. We were gods. He turned to face her. And then we fell. Again, and again, and again. Every few 100 million years, something would happen. A disaster. A war. A plague. And each time, we would lose everything. Our cities would crumble. Our technology would be forgotten. We would return to caves and stones and struggle to survive. But why? Amy managed to ask. Why didn't we just rebuild? Because that's not how humanity works, Nathan said. He smiled, but there was no joy in it. We are good at destroying ourselves, but we are also good at starting over. Each time we fall, some small group survives. They remember just enough to leave a message for the next version of humanity. A warning. A gift. A hope. He gestured at the chamber around them. This is one of those gifts. Before the last fall, our ancestors built 12 dreadnoughts, the most powerful weapons ever created. They hid them throughout our solar system and sealed this chamber with instructions on how to find them. 4 billion years, Amy whispered. They've been hidden for 4 billion years? Waiting, Nathan agreed. Waiting for the day when humanity would need them again. He walked to a console and began entering commands. One by one, the holographic displays changed, showing locations scattered across the solar system. Europa, Mars, Titan, the asteroid belt, 12 points of light, each marking the location of a sleeping giant. The devourer swarm is coming, Nathan said. The galaxy thinks we are weak. They want to use our ships as shields while they hide behind their own defenses. They have no idea what they're dealing with. Quote, Amy stepped closer to the central display. The dreadnought rotated slowly in the light, its hull covered in weapons she could not name. Are we going to show them? She asked. Nathan entered a final command. Throughout the chamber, lights began to turn from blue to green. Somewhere far away, Amy could feel a vibration in the floor. Something was waking up. Yes, Nathan said. We are going to show them exactly what humanity has been hiding. We are going to remind the galaxy why they should have been afraid of us all along. He looked up at the hologram of the ancient ship. His eyes reflected its light. 4 billion years, he said softly. That's a long time to sleep. Let's hope they're not too grumpy when they wake up. The vibration in the floor grew stronger. And deep beneath the ice of Europa, in the red dust of Mars, in the frozen darkness of Titan, ancient engines began to hum with life. For the first time in eons, the Dreadnoughts were waking, and the galaxy would never be the same. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Park had served in the Earth Defense Fleet for 15 years. He had seen battles and storms, and the cold emptiness between stars. He thought he understood the universe. He thought he knew what was possible and what was not. He was about to learn how wrong he was. His patrol ship, the Wanderer, had received new orders 6 hours ago. Strange orders. They were told to abandon their current route and proceed to coordinates near Jupiter's moon, Europa. No explanation, no details, just coordinates and a single word: urgent. Daniel had followed orders without question. That was what good officers did. But as the Wanderer approached Europa, he began to feel that something was very different about this mission. "Commander," said his navigator, Lisa Chen, "we're picking up a lot of traffic ahead. I count at least 200 ships already at the coordinates." Daniel leaned forward in his chair. 200? What kind of ships? "Everything, sir. Military cruisers, cargo vessels, even civilian transports. It looks like half of Earth's fleet is out here." Cruisers on Allerlong. That made no sense. The fleet was supposed to be preparing to join the Galactic Combined Defense Force. Why would they all be gathered at Europa? "Take us in slowly," Daniel ordered. "And keep sensors active. I want to know what's going on." The Wanderer moved closer to the gathering of ships. Daniel could see them now through the main viewport. Hundreds of vessels of all sizes, floating in formation around Europa's icy surface. They were all facing the moon, all waiting for something. "Sir," Lisa said, her voice suddenly strange, "I'm picking up seismic activity on Europa." Daniel frowned. "Seismic activity? On an ice moon?" "Yes, sir, and it's increasing. The readings are off the charts. It's like something is trying to break through from underneath." Before Daniel could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Admiral Kate Morrison's voice filled the bridge. "All Earth vessels, this is Admiral Morrison. Do not be alarmed by what you are about to see. Maintain your positions and await further instructions." Daniel exchanged confused looks with his crew. Lisa's hands moved over her console, pulling up sensor data. "Commander," she whispered, "the ice is cracking." Daniel looked out the viewport. She was right. Across Europa's surface, massive fractures were spreading like veins. The entire moon seemed to be splitting apart. Light was pouring through the cracks. Not sunlight, something else, something that glowed with a color Daniel had never seen before. And then it rose. A shape emerged from beneath the ice. At first, Daniel's mind could not understand what he was seeing. It was too big, too impossible. A vessel was pushing its way out of Europa like a whale breaching from the ocean. Except this whale was 800 kilometers long. The bridge fell silent. No one moved. No one breathed. The ship continued to rise. Its hull was dark gray, covered in patterns and symbols that seemed to shift when Daniel looked directly at them. Weapons studded its surface like thorns on a vine. Engines the size of cities glowed with ancient power. It was not a ship built by any technology Daniel knew. It was something older. Something from a time before time. "That's not possible," Lisa said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Nothing that big can exist." Admiral Morrison's voice returned. "All Earth vessels, what you are witnessing is the activation of the first of 12 Dreadnought-class warships. These vessels were hidden within our solar system by our ancestors approximately 4 billion years ago. They have been waiting for a moment exactly like this one." Daniel felt his heart pounding in his chest. 4 billion years. That was before life existed on Earth. Before the solar system had fully formed. How could humanity have existed then? "I know this is difficult to understand," Morrison continued. "The truth has been hidden from all of us. Humanity is not a young species. We are the oldest spacefaring civilization in the known universe. We have risen and fallen many times over billions of years. Each time we fall, we hide our greatest weapons and wait for ourselves to find them again. More shapes were emerging now, not just from Europa. Daniel's sensors were going crazy with alerts. Something was rising from Mars, from Titan, from the asteroid belt, from places humanity had explored for centuries without ever knowing what was hidden beneath the surface. 12 ships in total, each one as massive as the first. Each one covered in weapons that made the most powerful warships in the galaxy look like toys. The Galactic Council believes we are weak, Morrison said. They believe they can use us as shields while they hide behind their own defenses. They have no idea what they are dealing with. Daniel watched as the fleet of ancient vessels assembled. They moved with a grace that seemed impossible for their size. Their engines made no sound, but he could feel their power. Through the hull of his own ship, a vibration that seemed to reach into his bones. "Commander," Lisa said softly, "what do we do?" Daniel realized he was smiling. He did not know why. Perhaps it was the shock. Perhaps it was something deeper, a feeling that he was witnessing something his ancestors had always known about, somewhere deep in their souls. "We do what the Admiral says," he replied. "We wait, and we watch." The 12 dreadnoughts completed their formation. They hung in space like ancient gods, their weapons gleaming, their engines humming with power that had slept for longer than the stars themselves had burned. Admiral Morrison's voice came through one final time. "In 24 hours, we will contact the Galactic Council. We will show them what humanity has been hiding, and we will give them a choice. Stand with us, or stand aside." The communication ended. Silence filled the bridge of the Wanderer. Daniel leaned back in his chair and looked out at the impossible fleet. He thought about everything he had been taught. About humanity's place in the galaxy. About how they were young and weak and needed the protection of older species. All of it was wrong. "You know," Lisa said quietly, "I always felt like there was something special about being human. Something I could never explain. Like we were meant for something bigger than anyone realized." Daniel nodded slowly. "Maybe we were. Maybe we always knew. Somewhere deep down. We just forgot." Outside, the dreadnoughts waited. They had been patient for 4 billion years. They could be patient a little longer, but not much longer. The time for hiding was over. The time for revelation was about to begin. The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room Admiral Kate Morrison had ever seen. It was built to hold representatives from over 50 species, each with their own section of seats, their own life support systems, their own gravity fields. The ceiling rose so high that clouds had actually formed near the top, drifting slowly in the artificial atmosphere. Kate walked through the main entrance with her head held high. Behind her came a procession of human officers, all dressed in their formal uniforms, all maintaining the same calm expression. They had rehearsed this moment many times. They knew exactly what was about to happen. The chamber fell quiet as the humans entered. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to watch them. Kate could feel their contempt, their pity, their certainty that humanity was nothing more than a minor species about to be sacrificed for the greater good. High Chancellor Vethoran rose from his seat at the center of the chamber. His mandibles clicked with irritation. "Admiral Morrison," he said, "you were ordered to report with your fleet 24 hours ago. Instead, you arrive with a diplomatic delegation. This is unacceptable. Where are your ships?" Kate stopped in the center of the chamber floor. She looked up at the Chancellor with a pleasant smile. "They're here, Chancellor. Would you like to see them?" Vethoran's compound eyes narrowed. "Do not play games with me, human. We do not have time for your species' foolishness." "I agree completely," Kate said. "We don't have time for games. So, let me show you exactly what I mean." She turned to the young officer beside her. His name was Chris Brennan, and he was carrying a small device in his hands. At Kate's nod, he activated it. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It was huge, filling the space with an image of the void outside the council station. At first, there was nothing to see except stars. Then the view shifted, and there they were. 12 vessels hung in space just beyond the station. They were so large that they blocked out entire sections of the star field. Their hulls were covered in weapons and symbols that seemed to move when viewed directly. Their engines glowed with a light that hurt to look at. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The chamber erupted. Representatives screamed in a dozen languages. Some fled toward the exits, their bodies trembling with fear. Others simply stared, frozen in place, their minds unable to process what they were seeing. The Kelthian delegation made sounds that Kate's translator could not interpret. Perhaps there were no words for what they were feeling. What are those? Ambassador Gental of the Vorathi hegemony managed to ask. He was an old creature, covered in blue scales, and Kate had met him several times before. He had always treated humanity with polite disinterest. Now his voice shook like a child's. Those, Kate said calmly, are the Dreadnoughts of the First Age. They were built by humanity approximately 4 billion years ago. We have been hiding them since we first made contact with the galaxy. Impossible, Vethorin hissed. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. Your species is barely 200,000 years old. Your civilization is barely 10,000 years old. You cannot possibly have built those things. Kate turned to face him directly. That is how old our current civilization is, Chancellor. But humanity has existed far longer than that. We have risen and fallen many times throughout the history of the universe. Each time we fall, we hide our greatest achievements. We bury them where no one will find them. And we leave ourselves instructions to find them again when the time is right. She gestured at the holographic display. The chamber was still in chaos. Representatives were shouting at each other, demanding explanations, calling for their ships to retreat to safe distances. But Kate's voice cut through the noise like a blade. The Devourer swarm is coming, she said. You asked humanity to contribute our full military strength to your combined defense fleet. You wanted to use our ships as shields while your own fleets hid behind them. You thought we were weak. You thought we were expendable. She paused and let her words sink in. You were wrong. The holographic display changed, showing weapon specifications for the Dreadnoughts. Even Kate, who had studied these files for weeks, felt a chill when she saw them again. Planet crackers, star killers, devices that could fold space itself and trap entire fleets in pocket dimensions. Weapons that made the most advanced technology in the galaxy look like stone tools. Several representatives became physically ill. Others began to cry. One ambassador from a species Kate did not recognize simply fainted and had to be carried from the chamber. We do not want to lead your combined fleet, Kate continued. We do not want your ships, or your soldiers, or your resources. All we want is for you to stay out of our way while we deal with the Devourer swarm ourselves. Vethorin had recovered enough to speak again. His voice was no longer arrogant. It was small and frightened. Why? He asked. Why did you hide this? Why did you let us believe you were weak? Kate considered the question. It was a fair one. Because power is dangerous, she said finally. Our ancestors understood that better than anyone. They had seen what happened when civilizations became too powerful. They had seen empires rise and fall, wars that burned across galaxies, weapons that could end existence itself. They chose to hide what they had built. They chose to start over. They chose to be humble. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every representative who could bear to look at her. But they also prepared for the day when humility would no longer be enough, when something would threaten not just humanity, but all life in the universe. The Devourer swarm is that threat, and so we have revealed ourselves. The chamber was silent now. The chaos had faded into shock. Representatives sat in their seats like statues. Unable to move or speak, Kate turned back to face Vethorin. We will destroy the swarm, she said. That is not a hope or a plan. It is a fact. And when we are done, we will return to Earth and continue our lives as we always have. We will not seek to conquer the galaxy. We will not demand worship or tribute or power. We will simply go home." She smiled, and there was something ancient in that smile. Something that had been passed down through billions of years of human history. "Unless someone gives us a reason not to." No one spoke. No one moved. Kate nodded to her officers. "I believe we're done here. We have a swarm to destroy." And with that, the human delegation turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the stunned representatives of 50 species to wonder how they had ever believed that humanity was weak. Outside, the 12 dreadnoughts waited. Their weapons powered up. Their engines hummed with ancient power. The Devourer swarm had no idea what was coming for them. The Devourer swarm had been traveling through the universe for longer than most species had existed. They were not alive in the way that other creatures were alive. They did not think. They did not feel. They simply consumed. Every planet they touched became dust. Every star they approached was drained of energy. They converted all matter into more of themselves and moved on, an endless tide of destruction that had ended 17 civilizations across 3 galaxies. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever survived their arrival. Commander Sam Fletcher stood on the bridge of the Sentinel of Ages, the largest of the 12 dreadnoughts, and watched the swarm approach on the main display. The numbers were beyond imagination. 40 billion individual units, each one a living ship with weapons and armor grown from the bodies of the worlds they had consumed. They filled the void like a cloud of locusts, blocking out the stars themselves. Around him, a crew of 10,000 humans worked in perfect harmony. Their minds were connected to the ship's ancient neural network, a technology that let them feel the dreadnought as if it were their own body. Sam could sense every weapon, every engine, every system. The ship was old, so incredibly old, but it had never felt more alive. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Hannah Cole, looked up from her console. Her eyes were calm, focused. Like everyone else on the bridge, she had accepted what was about to happen. They were going to fight a force that had never been defeated. And they were going to win. "Contact in 60 seconds, she reported. "The swarm is spreading into attack formation. They're trying to surround us." Sam nodded. "Let them. It won't matter." Across the void, the other 11 dreadnoughts moved into position. They formed a line in space, their massive hulls gleaming with power that had been stored for 4 billion years. Each ship was manned by humans who had trained their entire lives for this moment, even though they had not known what they were training for until a few weeks ago. Admiral Morrison's voice came through the command channel. She was aboard the Vanguard of Dawn, leading the formation from the center of the line. "All vessels, this is Admiral Morrison. The galaxy is watching. The Galactic Council has deployed observation drones throughout the battle zone. Every species in the Federation will see what happens here today." Sam understood what she meant. This was not just about destroying the swarm. This was about showing the universe what humanity could do. This was about making sure no one ever underestimated them again. "Remember who we are," Morrison continued. "Remember what our ancestors built. Remember why they hid these ships and waited for this moment. They believed in us. They believed that when the time came, we would be ready." The swarm was almost in range now. Sam could see individual ships on the display. Each one, a twisted mass of metal and flesh, armed with weapons that had destroyed worlds. "Power up the fold cannons," he ordered. The weapons that activated along the Sentinel's hull had no parallel in modern galactic technology. They did not fire projectiles or energy beams. They did something far more terrible. They folded space itself, creating pockets of compressed reality that crushed everything within them into singularities. A single shot could destroy 1,000 enemy ships. A full salvo could erase a fleet from existence. "Weapons ready," Hannah reported. Sam looked at the swarm one last time. 40 billion ships. An enemy that had never been beaten. "Fire," space screamed. There was no other word for it. The fold cannons tore holes in reality itself, creating waves of destruction that rippled across the battlefield at speeds that should have been impossible. The swarm ships caught in those waves simply ceased to exist. They were folded into points smaller than atoms, crushed by forces that broke the laws of physics. Across the line, the other dreadnoughts fired their own weapons. Some used fold cannons. Others used weapons with different names and different effects. All of them equally devastating. Sam saw ships torn apart by gravity waves. He saw sections of the swarm frozen in time, unable to move or react. He saw entire regions of space turn white, with the light of 1,000 suns. And still the swarm kept coming. They were not intelligent enough to be afraid. They did not understand that they were facing something beyond their ability to fight. They simply continued forward, driven by the only instinct they had: consume. But there was nothing to consume. Every ship that got close was destroyed. Every wave of attackers was erased. The dreadnoughts stood like mountains in a storm, unmoved and unbreakable. The battle lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, the void was empty. 40 billion ships had been reduced to nothing but a faint shimmer of radiation that would fade within hours. The Devourer swarm, the greatest threat the universe had ever known, was gone. On observation stations throughout the galaxy, representatives of every species watched in stunned silence. They had seen the swarm destroy civilizations. They had seen it consume stars, and they had just watched humanity erase it from existence in less time than it took to boil water. Sam leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. Around him, the crew was silent. They had done what they were created to do. They had saved the galaxy. Admiral Morrison's voice came through the channel one final time. "Well done, everyone. Let's go home." The dreadnoughts turned and began the journey back to Earth. Behind them, the battlefield was empty, peaceful, as if nothing had ever happened. 6 months later, the Galactic Council officially changed humanity's status from emerging species to founding civilization. Human historians were invited to share what they knew about the previous cycles of human history. Scientists from dozens of species came to Earth to study the dreadnoughts and the technology they contained. Secretary Nathan Cole gave a single interview before retiring to a small cabin in the mountains. When asked how humanity had kept such a secret for so long, he smiled. "Every generation knows a little," he said. "We pass it down in stories and myths and legends. We talk about gods and monsters and wars in the heavens. We never quite believe it until we need to, but somewhere deep down, we always remember. We always find our way back." He looked up at the night sky, at the stars that humans had been watching since they first learned to look up. "That's what it means to be human," he said. "We fall. We forget. But we never stop trying to remember." Far out in the solar system, the 12 dreadnoughts had returned to their hiding places. They sank back beneath the ice of Europa, the dust of Mars, the darkness of Titan. Their engines went quiet. Their weapons powered down. They settled into sleep once more. They had been waiting for 4 billion years. They could wait a little longer. After all, humanity always came back. That was what they did. That was what they had always done. And somewhere in the void between stars, the universe turned slowly on, carrying humanity forward into whatever future awaited them. A future that would be strange and wonderful and terrifying. A future that they would face together, as they always had, as they always would.